Hey guys, good morning. So I'm sorry I'm a little late. I just was getting ready for the day. It's like gloomy in Southern California, so it makes you want to be like a little lazy. And I got to bed pretty late last night, so hello. I'm just gonna wait for everyone to join that's gonna join, and then you guys can of course start asking questions whenever. I had a few questions that came in the DMs, and now I'm like completely spacing. Oh, there was a question on how do I feel about sprouted nuts and seeds? And I think it's important for everyone to eat what they feel good with. I just think it's important to be aware of how food affects the human body and affects physiology. I think a lot of people are like obsessed with what they call bio-individuality. They say like, well, what works for one person is not going to work for the other. And that's true to a point, but then the human body works a specific way, and there are just certain things that affect the human body. And so a lot of people are overdoing it on the nuts and seeds, but if you're going to do nuts and seeds, I think having them be sprouted is going to be the best possible way to do nuts and seeds, and I think doing them in moderation is the best. I think relying too heavily upon nuts and seeds always comes with a downfall eventually, whether that's now or later. But yeah, a little bit of sprouted nuts and seeds, especially if your body does really well with them, I don't think is a problem. I just think more leaning on nuts and seeds as a whole too much can be a problem. And oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the other question that came in. I can't think of it, but I'll wait for everyone's questions to come in. I was just listening to a really interesting talk. Jodelle Fit, I think she's on Instagram, but I follow her on YouTube. She interviews Ray Peat a lot and Georgi Dinkov, and they did this discussion about magnesium, which was just mind-blowing. So I really would recommend it. It's on YouTube. What could be some causes of pelvic pain, left lower pelvic area? It could be a lot of things. I mean, obviously this is just speculation. It's always important if you have that type of pain to first make sure you get it checked out with like an ultrasound, or you let your doctor know, because it can be anything. It could be a wide range from something not so serious to really, really serious. If your doctor can't figure it out, then at that point it's like, okay, is it an ovarian cyst that's bursting? Is it inflammation? Is it gut related? Like there's inflammation stemming from the gut that's bothering you. It can be scar tissue. It could just be a pelvic floor imbalance in general, weak pelvic floor or an imbalanced pelvic floor. But yeah, like you would first want to make sure you get it checked out. If it's not endometriosis or some kind of tumor or cyst, then it might be something a little bit more benign. But yeah, it could be a lot of things. Hi, any advice on how to intake progesterone? I don't really give advice on progesterone because I think it really does need to be experimented by the individual. I think it can be different for everybody, and the type, like the delivery matters, and then also the dosage really depends on the person. But usually if you're premenopausal, progesterone should be taken in a cyclical manner as your body produces progesterone. So first and foremost, if a woman's taking progesterone and she doesn't understand her cycle, she should not take progesterone until she understands her menstrual cycle. Watch my highlight story on menstrual cycle. You need to understand how your body produces progesterone. Keep in mind, during the follicular phase, you make no progesterone. Once your body ovulates, you drop that egg, the emptied egg sac becomes the corpus luteum, and that corpus luteum becomes an endocrine gland that makes you progesterone for 12 to 14 days. And so you need to make sure that you understand that before you go implementing a hormone that could have really, really big side effects. So you would want to mimic your body's natural production of progesterone, and it's important to understand that before you implement it. How come if I have estrogen dominant symptoms when I take DIM, my hair falls out like crazy? Because DIM is not safe, and I really don't understand why practitioners recommend DIM. It really is not safe. And it only helps with phase 1 of estrogen detoxification. Keep in mind you have 2 or actually 3 phases of estrogen detoxification. And if estrogen's going through phase 1 but not going through phase 2, it can actually lead to further estrogen dominance when you're taking DIM, because not only are you like metabolizing estrogen through phase 1 quicker, but then you're not able to get it out via phase 2, and so it's actually usually getting reabsorbed and reutilized by the body, causing estrogen dominant symptoms. A lot of women report seeing hair fall out or feeling crazy. because DIM is actually driving their more issues rather than helping issues. DIM is not safe for most women, and I never implement it ever. I usually take people off of it because I just don't think it's safe, and I don't understand why like naturopaths and doctors are still recommending it. It is not safe. What is your favorite kind of raw cheese? I usually use, what's the brand? I love organic pastures when possible. But I can also do, what's the brand? It's, I want to say it's like Fremont Farms or something. It's at my local health food store, but I usually will grab like just a raw cheddar, or sometimes they'll have raw pepper jack, and that's like one of my favorites. But I do occasionally do like a more pasteurized cheese as well. It just kind of depends on what's available. I try to do most of my dairy raw. But there are time and again when I just want, like, for example, some mozzarella or something like that, and I can't get it raw, then I will have it pasteurized. But most of the time I'm doing like raw cheddar. Or use progesterone. When it comes to using progesterone, I think it's just like really figuring out like if it's gonna work for you or not. And sometimes the only way is like experimentation. It's best to test before to know where your progesterone levels are. Keep in mind that your progesterone levels do have to be tested 5 to 7 days after you ovulate, because that's the only time that you make progesterone. So many people get their progesterone levels tested before they ovulate, and their doctor's like, oh, it's normal. And I'm like, yeah, there's none, because you're not making any yet. Hi, did it take months or years for you to see improvement in hirsutism? Thank you. Years. It's never an overnight thing, and it's still something that continues to improve. I just try not to obsess about symptoms. I know it's hard, especially when it affects like your appearance or it affects your confidence, but there are things to do. Like, while I was struggling with the worst of hirsutism, I still use them, but like tinkle razors. I had like really bad peach fuzz, still really have pretty bad peach fuzz. I had like a little bit of a mustache and then like stuff on my chin. And so I would just use the tinkle razors. I would get my eyebrows waxed. I would sometimes get my lip waxed. And then I would get like my bikini line waxed, just things that like made me feel a little bit better about myself. Yeah, it was like a little bit more money, but it like made me not think about it. I think thinking about it and seeing it all the time can really like make you struggle with it more. And then over time, I realized like I don't really have to do that anymore because it's not as bad. But yeah, hirsutism does take years to improve. Once you get your blood sugar balance, once you get your insulin levels down, once you get your testosterone levels down, get your progesterone levels up, it can take some serious time and work to get there. And then on top of it, it's going to take a while for that DHEA to stop turning to DHT in the skin tissues. So it takes a while, and it can be really like challenging in the meantime. Can you overdo it on magnesium? I'm wondering if I should supplement, but not sure if I already get enough from my diet. I suffer from PMS symptoms, and I'm wondering if it would help. I wouldn't say like you can't overdo it, because you can overdo it with like any electrolytes. A lot of times, like for example, if you overdid it on salt, you would get really, really bloated, or you would have diarrhea. Similar with magnesium, a lot of people will get diarrhea, but I usually recommend for people who have PMS issues, most people are deficient in magnesium, and usually about 5 times your body weight in milligrams is necessary. And keep in mind, you're not absorbing it all. A lot of times you have to build a bowel tolerance to it, so a lot of times it will create loose stools, and so some of it's passing through you. So for my clients, I do both internal and then also external or transdermal, which is going to be either like in the form of a magnesium spray or Epsom salt foot baths or Epsom salt baths or magnesium flake baths. So really, like, you can overdo it, but when it comes to magnesium, most people are so severely deficient that that's not the worry. Almost every single person on this planet, or at least in the US, is in the Western world, is going to be deficient in magnesium. How do you feel about seed cycling? I think it's kind of hilarious. I think it's a joke. I'm not a fan of seeds. Most people that have been around a while know that. Keep in mind, like in the 90s, we were like growing chia pets out of chia seeds, and now people are like saying like we should eat them for my hormones, and I'm like, So seeds, in my opinion, are not a super health food. I know there's a lot of information that says the contrary, but you kind of just have to look at the facts. You have to look at biology. How are seeds meant to function in nature? And their fats are very not stable when it comes to heat, light, and oxygen. Keep in mind, our bodies are 98.6 degrees. We are oxygen-rich beings, and we are hot beings. And so if we're consuming tons of seeds that have oils that go rancid when exposed to heat and light, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I'm not a big fan of seeds. I think they're pretty estrogenic. I think they can cause a lot of issues long term. And I don't really see a lot of benefit from seed cycling. You know, if you do, more empowerment to you, more power to you, but so many people don't. And I just find it confusing. Like, it's just one extra thing to do, and it's kind of annoying. Hi Jess, this is my second month on progesterone and my period came at 26 days instead of 45. Is that normal? I couldn't believe it. Last month with 35 days, I was super surprised, but it was symptomless. Yeah, that's pretty normal. Usually when you're low progesterone and you need it, progesterone will shorten your cycles, get you ovulating earlier, shorten the follicular phase, get your body's inflammation down, get your stress down, and overall just benefit you. And so what you're seeing is you saw your cycle shorten and shorten. Usually it will balance out at some point, so you don't want it to continue to get shorter and shorter, but that sounds like a pretty normal reaction to it, especially if it's necessary for your body. Thank you for the DIM info. I hate DIM. Yeah, not a fan of DIM. It's crazy, really, because so many people still recommend it for like estrogen detox, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works, guys. You said to take sugar, good forms like fruit, but why do I still not feel satisfied after fruit? Like I still need that chocolate cake. Well, are you getting carbohydrates? Are you getting tons of, you might need starches. You might just need more calories in general. A lot of people need both. So starch and fruit together usually works really, really well. Keep in mind that chocolate cake or sugar, sucrose, table sugar is both fructose and sucrose. That's why it's so satisfying. It's not just one form of sugar, which is fructose, or the other form of sugar, which is glucose. It's both glucose and fructose. So that's the most satisfying thing to your body. So that's why I always try to get both a starch and a fruit at my meal and combine my carbohydrates. It's not completely necessary, but I find that a lot of women are more satisfied when they combine both fructose and sucrose together. So this would look like at breakfast, you have your eggs for your protein, and then you have like a piece of sourdough or gluten-free bread and a little bit of juice instead of just doing like 2 pieces of sourdough bread or whatever. So you're combining fructose and glucose, and a lot of times that makes women feel a lot more satisfied. If you're still craving junk food and chocolate cake and that type of thing, what does your protein intake look like? Are you overall eating enough calories in general? Keep in mind, a lot of times when we crave junk food, those are calorie-dense, calorie-rich foods. They're not just providing you sugar, they're providing you lots and lots of fats, not good fats, but still fats, and carbohydrates in general. So is your body just craving lots of energy? If that's the case, then are you getting enough energy? So those are a few things to think about, but I find that combining a little glucose with fructose, which would look like starch and fruit, does the body really good, especially for women who feel like they constantly struggle with like junk food cravings or very, very rich food cravings. I just recently listened to a podcast on how organic fruits and veggies are still sprayed with pesticides, sometimes even more than non-organic. What are your thoughts on this? I, for one, was shook. Hence why I don't eat a lot of vegetables. They're just toxic. Like, we cannot really find, unless we're going to grow our own, it's very hard to find vegetables that are not really non-toxic. And the pesticides that are approved for organic are still going to be things that affect us, maybe not as bad as like glyphosate, for example. But, for example, one of the pesticides that's approved for organic produce is copper. Copper can lead to copper toxicity. This is why a lot of vegans and vegetarians have horrible copper toxicity symptoms. They are very depleted in zinc because vegetables are not as healthy as they're being promoted, just because of how depleted our soil is and how toxic our production of agriculture is. So, of course, don't be afraid of fruits and vegetables. I personally still will buy organic as much as possible. I don't eat a lot of above ground produce for that reason. They're the ones that are most susceptible to bugs. I'm eating more fruits and roots just because they're less susceptible to bugs, and so they're not going to be sprayed on with pesticides as much. Keep in mind that pesticides are expensive. Farmers aren't just going to spray their produce with pesticides just because. They're only going to spray the produce that is most susceptible to bugs, and that's going to be like leaves and above ground veggies like broccoli, cauliflower, those types of things. So I don't eat a lot of those foods, and when I do, they're going to be super, super well cooked, or they're going to be turned into a broth or something like that. So overall, I find that 9 out of 10 of my clients do better when we start to get rid of all those vegetables out of their diet, and we do specific types of produce, and we do produce very strategically, like I said, well cooked. Opinion on all natural energy drinks. My opinion is, why do you need it? Question, why do you need it? If you need an all-natural energy drink, there's a problem, and you should be spending your money on B vitamins, you should be spending your money on a good coffee, you should be spending your money on things that are going to actually give you more energy, so blue blocking glasses at night, getting to bed earlier. My question is always, why do you need it? Occasionally, not a problem. But all natural energy drinks work the same way that a non-natural energy drink is going to work. Personally, some of the all natural energy drinks are crap in my opinion. I would prefer to just drink a Red Bull. So I think it's important to just ask yourself, like, why do you need it? Of course, we all have those days where it's like, okay, I just need a pick-me-up. At that point, like, it's probably best to reach for coffee because it's going to provide you with a good source of B vitamins. It's going to provide you with a good source of like a little bit of magnesium, potassium, and if you want to do even better for yourself, pair it with some type of nutrient-dense snack so it doesn't increase your cortisol levels. But I'm not a huge fan of energy drinks unless they provide you like a good dose of like B vitamins and actually energy-enhancing nutrients. But it really depends on the type. Is it safe to use pancreatic enzymes and proteolytic enzymes together, not the same time but the same day? And for vitamin E, can I take it if I haven't done tests to see if I'm deficient or not? These are questions that you guys need to decide for yourself. No one on the internet should be making that decision for you. You need to experiment for yourself, and you need to be informed. And everyone that takes control of their own health is the one, they do the research with the best information they have available to them. They make a decision that is best about their body. If anything pops up, then they can stop it. You know what I mean? So it's like we have to take full control of our health in order to be able to handle the possible side effects that come from something. For example, if I choose to experiment with some type of ingredient, I'm going to take full responsibility that if I start to see symptoms or feel weird, I know I've been experimenting, and so I'm going to stop. When you let somebody else make the choice for you, a lot of times we just continue to take something without actually paying attention to our body. So the proper experimentation would be, I have done a lot of research on this nutrient or this ingredient or this supplement. I have decided with the best information available to me that it's something that might benefit me. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see how my body responds. If my body responds negatively at any point, I'm going to stop. That is how we properly go about implementing things into our diet. Pancreatic enzymes are usually just for digestion. Proteolytic enzymes are for clearing toxic proteins. Sometimes they have the same ingredients, so flip that bottle around and make sure you're not taking a double of something. But proteolytic enzymes are usually taken in between meals, and pancreatic enzymes are usually taken with meals. And then for vitamin E, that is your decision to make. Some people do well with a little bit of a higher dose. Their needs for vitamin E go up when they have estrogen dominance, or when they've, when they've been on a high fat diet in the past and now they're going back to eating carbohydrates. So at that point, it's really hard to figure out how much you need until you just try it. Some women need like 400 IUs every couple of days. Some women need 100 IUs every couple of days. Some women need 100 IUs every day. It just kind of depends on the woman. But it is a blood thinner, as are proteolytic enzymes, so you do need to be careful with taking mega doses of both of them. That's just something to be aware of. But I'm careful with vitamin E just because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, and I'm more conscious of it, but I'm not super afraid of it. Why do I feel like I need greasy food all the time to keep my energy levels? Does your stool float? If your stool floats or looks greasy, you might not be digesting fat well, and you might need like some hydrochloric acid or pancreatic enzymes. You just might not be absorbing fat well. If not, if you're like your bowel movements are good and digestion is good, you might just need fats. You might just need more fats. You might be a fast oxidizer, meaning that your metabolism is out of balance but towards the fast side. And so some people who have really fast oxidation, they need things that are going to slow them down, which excessive amounts of fats actually slow the body down, and in some cases that's what they need. So if you need fat, just make sure you're opting for good fats. And if you, for example, you're craving fries, fry some fries in coconut oil, and don't opt for the ones that are being fried in canola oil. So there's nothing wrong with fatty foods, especially if your body needs them. On my periods right now, have PCOS. I'm trying to track what's happening during this time. Notice I am too emotional and starting 3 to 4 days of period and binge eating, craving sugar cakes. Keep in mind, guys, that your period is a report card for how you're doing all month long. Sometimes there are things that we don't feel all cycle long that are happening, but during our period, we see it. When we crave a lot of things during our period, especially when it comes to sugar, you need to ask yourself, have you been restricting your whole cycle? Meaning your whole month long, have you been not keeping your blood sugar balance, restricting carbohydrates, restricting sugar? So now that's being expressed in cravings galore. If that's the case, then you need to take that as a advice from your body saying like you need to balance your blood sugar every single day with protein, carb, and fat every 2 to 4 hours. Everyone's different in how often they need to eat. You need to not avoid carbohydrates, specifically like roots and fruits and honey and dairy products if you can handle them, maple syrup, things like that. Like, don't restrict those things because those cravings will come up later on in your cycle, usually during your period, and you're going to crave everything in sight and not be able to control yourself. Also, magnesium is definitely necessary. When we're magnesium deficient, we get horrible cravings around our periods and PMS time. My morning temps really improved quickly on Fully Nourished, but now I'm on my period, they are low again. Do you know why? I'm eating the same. Yeah, your period tends to be the most accurate depiction of where your metabolism is actually at. So a lot of times we can get like higher readings when progesterone is at play during the last half of our cycle. So if temperatures are low during our period, then that's more accurate of where our temperatures and pulses are at actually, and we need to just continue to work on it. Hi Jess, a couple of lives ago you briefly mentioned how we shouldn't eat that much meat from things like tissue, muscles, and that we should vary the animal protein we have if I'm correct. Why is that? Keep in mind that muscle meats are very dense in certain amino acids. We've got methionine and we've got a lack of glycine, and we've got excessive amounts of cysteine. And so muscle meats are dense in certain amino acids and they're deficient in other amino acids. And so we need to make sure that we're getting enough of all amino acids. And keep in mind, our ancestors have kind of adapted to eating the whole animal, and our bodies require, or at least will be optimal with the whole animal. So this is why it's important to get gelatinous foods in, things like bone broth, collagen, gelatin, every single day. Even organ meats are very important. They're going to provide you with lots of glycine. So I think that it's important to varietize and not eat too many muscle meats, which a lot of people do. And they actually almost get like, think of, I'm trying to explain this the right way. Like even in ancient times, they used to think, if you're going to eat the organ of a healthy animal, it's going to increase the organ of you, meaning like if you ate the organ of a healthy cow's liver, then your liver would be optimized. And it goes the same for eating a muscle of a healthy animal. It's going to really grow your muscles. And so you'll find that people that eat excessive amounts of meat tend to have like bigger muscles. This is why bodybuilders eat a lot of meat, but they can be really anti-thyroid. So I just recommend getting a variety: dairy, eggs, a little bit of muscle meat, shellfish, whitefish, bone broth, collagen, gelatin, and a little bit of organ meats here and there to really balance out the amino acid profile to better benefit you and your health. Thoughts on seed cycling for regulating cycle, or seeds or PUFAs? I don't like seeds just in general because of what their purpose is in nature. I don't think seeds are necessarily like a health food. They've kind of came on the scene in the past like 10 or 15 years, but before we just like kind of grew chia pets out of them. So I've already kind of talked about seed cycling earlier on. I don't really think it works. I'm not like very enthralled by it. A lot of women might have like a placebo effect, or they might, if it works for them, that's great. But I think it's kind of one of those things that just adds complication to life, and I don't really think that seeds are that beneficial. Tell your homemade bread recipe, please. That gives me more fat. I have my homemade sourdough recipe in Fully Nourished, in the Fully Nourished recipe book. If you need one, you can always just Google like spelt sourdough or einkorn sourdough. You can always Google buckwheat bread. You're just looking for either a properly fermented sourdough that uses a sourdough starter, or you're looking for a gluten-free grain bread. And sometimes I will buy a gluten-free bread. Like I don't always do that, but I try to make my own as much as possible. Foods for estrogen dominance. Foods for estrogen dominance is going to definitely be a raw carrot every single day. That's a must. I like cooked greens. That can be another really good food for estrogen dominance. Make sure you get enough protein, and then root vegetables are wonderful, and fruit fibers are wonderful. You're looking for foods that are going to bind to estrogen and carry them out of the body. Graves' disease. I'm having trouble understanding the hyperautoimmune response. Do you know what might cause this? Is it our body panicking to try to pump out more TSH because we aren't converting T4? You are boom right on the money. So it is a response. It's kind of like people go hypothyroid, they can also go hyperthyroid. It just depends on their physiology. It depends on mineral balance. It depends on what the thyroid has to function. A lot of times people with Graves' disease have a little bit more of certain nutrients, and so they can tend to pick up the pace. But you always want to look at a full thyroid panel when it comes to Graves' disease. And iodine levels are so important. A lot of people, they're like, if you find like not ancient handbooks, but like handbooks, medical handbooks from like 100, 150 years ago, their treatment for Graves' disease was actually just drinking cabbage juice for 3 days in a row, and the goitrogen would actually slow down the thyroid function. So in Graves' disease, one of the like simplest ways to like get the thyroid to slow down is just to eat some goitrogenic foods. Even go so far as like juicing cabbage or something like that. But of course, that's just a suggestion and something that you should maybe look into. The autoimmune response, keep in mind the thyroid tissue is inflamed and it can cause an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid. You also want to ask yourself if you're intracellularly hypothyroid, meaning that just because there's a certain amount of hormone in the bloodstream, I talk about this pretty regularly, that does not always mean the cells are uptaking that, right? Because how are the cells actually seeing that hormone and responding to that hormone? Many times you can do like a hair tissue mineral analysis, and you can see if your cells are actually hypo or hyperthyroid. Very oftentimes in Graves' disease, the cells are not taking up thyroid hormone at all. So you have these cells that are hypothyroid, but in the blood, you're looking hyperthyroid. So it's just really interesting. So there are a lot of caveats, but you've pretty much described it. Your body's pumping out more TSH, you're not converting T4 to T3, you might not be cellularly uptaking it, that kind of thing. The thyroid's just overworked. The tissue is trying to repair itself as quickly as possible. Keep in mind, guys, that the thyroid is kind of like the canary in the coal mine, in the sense where our thyroid tissue is very sensitive to things like heavy metals, pesticides. So you always want to make sure there's no like acute heavy metal exposure or pesticide exposure. Is your water filtered? Are you being exposed to mold in your environment? Something like that, because the thyroid tissue will begin to try to rapidly repair itself, and that could also increase, TSH and other hormone production. How many grams of fiber you aim for? Now that I'm not vegetarian, I literally eat only like 5 or 6 grams. Should I increase that? Thank you for all your time. I'm not like a fiber obsessed person. There's a lot of people who are fiber obsessed, and I think it really depends on where the fiber comes from. I don't really think that we need as much fiber. Some people do need more fiber than others, but I think that's a really personal thing. There are people that you find on completely no fiber diets. As long as you're having regular bowel movements and your hormones are good, there is no such thing as eating too much fiber as well. Hi, from your only male follower. I have a few. I think it says that I have 3% of my followers are male. Hi Jess, what would be the most important advice on PCOS? Make sure you're sleeping from 10 to 2. Make sure you're exercising, some type of strength training or getting outside, walking, whatever it is. Make sure you're surrounded by positive people that uplift you and you do the same to them. Do not surround yourself with toxic people that drag you down, and take care of yourself. Drink water, eat well, and overall just make it a habit to take care of yourself. That's going to be the biggest thing. Of course, there are more like in-depth things that I recommend for PCOS, but if those things aren't taken care of, then nothing else really works. I know you say protein, carb, and fat every 2 to 4 hours, and I know everyone's caloric needs will be different, but what would you say for how many grams of each? That really depends on your overall calorie total. I don't really recommend like an amount of each. I do think like with protein, anywhere from 0.7 to a gram of protein per pound of body weight is usually a good idea. Never dipping below 100 grams of protein a day is a good plan. When it comes to fat and carbohydrate, that really does need to be played around with. Usually when it comes to fat, it's going to be anywhere from like 20 to 40% of calories will come from fat, and anywhere from like 25 to 50% of calories will come from carbs. It really depends on the person, but you do want to keep protein at a certain level. Like you never want to drop protein too low unless you're purposely doing some type of protein fast for health reasons. And that's only for a temporary period of time. I do hit over 100 grams of protein a day to above question. Perfect. You just answered my question. So I think that when it comes to the amount of grams each, it just depends on your overall, like your exercise. But I don't usually recommend women eat less than 17 to 1800 calories per day, unless they're, small for whatever reason. Like there are some very small women that are like 4'8", 4'9", or like, even up to 5 foot, and then they might need a little less. And depending on your metabolism, like you might need, especially if you were under eating for such a long period of time, you might need to keep things low and then like slowly work up. But usually like around 17 to 1800 calories is a good place to be. Which grass-fed butter do you recommend? Thoughts on Kerrygold? I usually use Kerrygold. Irish butter is usually grass-fed. And then, there's also organic pastures, raw butter, which I'll sometimes buy. Vital Farms butter I'll sometimes buy. But usually I just buy Kerrygold. It's normally grass-fed. I'm going to pull some questions. Oh, I don't have questions anymore. I had a lot of questions that came in last time, and I was going to get caught up on lives, and then next time I'll have like pre-submissions so you guys can pre-submit your questions live. But you guys had great questions. I know that a lot of you have questions on like what to eat. Keep in mind that my program Fully Nourished does go over that quite a bit in depth and educates you guys on nutrition and educates you guys on foods so that you don't feel so stuck when it comes to food. When it comes to like supplementation, I usually recommend like keeping it to quite a minimum if possible. Magnesium is very important. Certain minerals are very important. But if you're doing grass-fed liver, like about once a week or once every 2 weeks, oysters pretty regularly, you can get a lot of nutrients. And then, like in Fully Nourished, I have a homemade multivitamin that you can make out of herbs. So you can really get away with very little supplementation if possible. You mentioned the detox lemonade. How do we make it? Yeah, so the detox lemonade is 1 to 2 tablespoons of chlorophyll, depending on how much you can handle. 2 tablespoons of cranberry juice concentrate, just make sure it's organic. The juice of half a lemon or a lime. And then optional is 2 dropperfuls of milk thistle tincture. I like Nature's Answer from Amazon. And milk thistle doesn't work well for everyone. It usually does support detoxification, but some people, for some reason, don't do well with it. So always just keep that in mind that not everything works for everyone. So if you're reacting poorly to something, it could just be that it doesn't work for you. But yeah, it's very simple. It's very refreshing. Like it sounds kind of gross, but it doesn't taste bad. And it usually is best like drinking. I don't know the past form of drink. The second half of the cycle. So during the luteal phase. What kind of breed is your dog? He is a full purebred German Shepherd, and he kind of like fell in my lap. We had a family friend that died and had this 2-year-old huge, fully black, long-haired German, and he's quite the dog. He's very obnoxious. I love him, but he is just like, I'm training him and everything. So but yeah, he's a German Shepherd. He looks like a wolf, but I promise he's not a wolf. He's just a German. What are your thoughts on juicing for acne? I think that juicing can provide a lot of benefit. I just don't, like, it really depends on what you're juicing. I'm not a huge fan of juicing a bunch of green vegetables. I just find that it can, like, not be that great. But juicing fruits can be helpful. Like, I love fruit juice. I think it's wonderfully healing and, like, super underrated. And then I also like some root vegetables like carrots and beets and things like that. But I don't think like juice fasts are necessary or anything like that. It can be a wonderful complement, but I wouldn't I wouldn't juice fast. Chlorophyll gives me the runs. Oh, that's a bummer. Well, keep in mind it's really rich in magnesium, and it's also pretty detoxifying to the gut. It can kind of shift the microbiome just because it's so rich in like certain things. See, like he's like crowding me right now. He's like pushing against me. He's so obnoxious. But yeah, chlorophyll, if it gives you the runs, you would want to lower the dose to like, a fourth of that, and then maybe work your way up over time if you can tolerate it. But yeah, it's really rich in minerals, and it is rich in magnesium, so it can cause diarrhea. I often feel like compulsive need or sense to pee. What is that about, and any suggestions? Sorry, it's weird. No, it's not weird. I think like if you have to pee a lot, sometimes it could just be pure adrenaline if you find yourself just peeing water right through you. But if it's more of like a compulsive need to pee but nothing comes out, I would get your pelvic floor checked by like a pelvic floor physio. That could be a sign of pelvic floor imbalances, especially if you've had children. That's really important to get checked out. And another thing could be like prolactin levels can cause like incontinence or like compulsive needs to pee. Like estrogen dominance there are hormonal imbalances that can go as far as causing incontinence, but that doesn't always mean it's going to cause incontinence. It might just cause you to feel like you need to pee over and over and over again, or like you can't fully empty your bladder. I know you love Naked Whey, but have you heard of Tara's Whey? Thanks for the live. Yeah, I like Tara's Whey too. I think it's like pretty high quality. He just burped in my face. Tara's Whey is pretty good. And they have a goat's whey that some people that don't do well on cow's whey can do really pretty good on the goat's whey. So I like Tara's Whey. I don't think it's a problem. He does look like a wolf. LOL, that's why I had to ask. Love the story behind your dog. Aw. What brand of chlorophyll do you recommend? I usually use, what's it called? Oh my gosh. Oh, it's called World Organic. I'm like picturing it has like a globe on it. I usually use one called World Organic, but any organic one will do. What can help me get pregnant? I take letrozole and metformin. I ovulate but can't get pregnant. Well, why is your body not, you probably don't have the nutrients needed, usually when that's the case, or have you ever gotten a full thyroid panel done? Progesterone levels are also needed. So did you get your progesterone levels tested 5 to 7 days after you ovulate? They should be above 8 nanograms per deciliter. So progesterone levels, full thyroid panel, and then if those are good, which usually they aren't, then at that point, mineral panel. So are you low in magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, all necessary to have a healthy baby. Keep in mind, guys, when we can't get pregnant, the body's trying to protect us and protect our future child. If it doesn't have the nutrients needed to grow a baby, it can really be very dangerous for both us and the baby. So a lot of times not being able to get pregnant is a defense mechanism, and I know it sucks, and I know like we want a baby and we want it right now, but sometimes the body's actually doing us a huge favor if we don't have the hormones necessary to grow a baby. There are a lot of things that go into growing another human being, and so we do need to make sure that we have those things before we have a child. World Organics chlorophyll. Okay. I'm about to start bioidentical progesterone orally. What are your tips? I don't really have any tips. I think it's just start it, try it. Usually day 14 to 28 is the most important time to take it, and just kind of pay attention. But yeah, you don't need to really worry about it. Once you get it, you've decided to try it. It's just about trying it and seeing what happens. Also, would you explain collagen a little bit better? It's so new to me. And how do you eat it? Is it always powder? Sorry, most people probably know this. Yeah, collagen is just a certain type of protein that is transferred from gelatin to collagen. So you're probably familiar with gelatin. It gets all jello-like. You can make jello out of it. And that is absolutely a really great health food, but not everyone wants to add gelatin to a smoothie and have their smoothie become like a thick pudding. So collagen was taken from gelatin, and it is hydrolyzed. And what they do is they break down the amino acids so that it doesn't get gelatinous, and so you can add it to things without tasting it and without it causing a texture change. That's all that collagen is. It's gelatin that's been a little bit processed so that it doesn't get thick and jello-like anymore. But yeah, I add it to coffee, I add it to tea, I add it to, sometimes like if I don't have protein at a meal and I'm in a pinch, I'll add it to some water and just chug it down. I'll add it to my smoothies, I'll add it to soups. Like you can really add it to like a lot of things. I'll add it to recipes, like if I'm cooking brownies or zucchini bread or carrot cake or just about anything, add it in there. So I'm like adding it to a lot of things. But yeah, it's always the powder. Thoughts on the celery juice craze to heal the gut? Tried it briefly, but found it unsustainable for sourcing and crazy price. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Keep in mind that celery is really high in sodium and potassium, which most people need for gut health, and that's why they're seeing so many like amazing things happen with celery juice because of the trace minerals. So yeah, celery juice can be a source of those things, but it doesn't need to be celery juice. Just supplements a high quality sea salt and a high quality potassium, and you'll see the same results. So, and it doesn't help everyone because not everyone needs those things and not everyone is deficient in those things. You know what I mean? So like some people are, and that's why they see benefit from it, but some people aren't. And it's not enough to heal the gut. You know, it increases your hydrochloric acid, your stomach acid levels, it increases enzyme production, but it's not going to heal your gut. Especially a lot of people are like, it healed my gut, and then they go off of celery juice and their problems come back, and I'm like, no, it didn't heal your gut. It was a symptom suppressor, and the minute you went off of it, it came back, so it didn't heal anything. I get very strong pain in my calves when I walk after my period. What could cause that? I would say like probably 8 out of 10, that would be a magnesium deficiency. That's just a guess, it's just speculation, but I would probably say that would be magnesium deficiency. Especially if you're magnesium deficient pre-period and going into the period magnesium deficient, then you're going to feel those symptoms of magnesium deficiency afterwards. Keep in mind, guys, calcium is a super sharp mineral, and magnesium and calcium kind of work as, they don't work against each other, but they work to balance each other out. So calcium is sharp, magnesium, and calcium is responsible for tightening up the muscle, whereas magnesium is responsible for relaxing the muscle. And so magnesium deficiency is real. It's very, very common, and a lot of women definitely see the effects of it during their period and post-period. My doctor said day 17 to 26 for progesterone. What's the difference? Whatever your doctor says, that's fine. Some doctors want you to take it after you ovulate. I usually say the best way to do it is just track your ovulation and then take it after you ovulate. You just don't want your progesterone to prevent you from ovulating. So that's like the biggest thing, is you want to make sure that you're ovulating first and then taking progesterone, but some women don't ovulate at all, and so at that point you would just take it when you would supposedly ovulate. But yeah, follow what your doctor says. It's the same. It's different doctors have different recommendations, but yeah, you can take it from like after you ovulate, which is usually day 17, to before your period starts. They're probably just trying to prevent you from stopping ovulation or stopping your period from coming. Why is there a warning for kids on the collagen bottle? I'm not sure. I haven't seen the warning, but yeah, I'm not sure what the warning says. Should I take vitamin D and use a red light in the winter if I don't get much sun? That's kind of a question that you like would know better than me, but if you really don't get any sun, then yeah, it's probably best to use a red light and use incandescent lights throughout your house, and maybe think about supplementing vitamin D. I think I'm missing a period, and even though I have PCOS, I usually have periods. I'm moving right now. Would that have anything to do with it? I get really anxious when my period doesn't come. Keep in mind, guys, your period's never late. Your ovulation was late. So what happened 2 weeks ago that could have maybe stressed your body out and prevented you from dropping an egg? If you're moving, probably it. I've seen people like get a delayed ovulation from traveling, from having a really stressful event with family. Sometimes that's the body just being protective. Like your body doesn't want to have a baby right now. Like that's probably not the best option for you. So you don't ovulate, or you ovulate later on. So I wouldn't stress about it, especially this is why it's really important to track your ovulation, you guys. If you're tracking your cycles, you're going to be very aware. Oh, I ovulated 1 week later, my period's going to come 1 week later, because you always have a period 11 to 14 days after you ovulate. There's no, like, you can't ovulate without a period. So that is the best way to never feel scared again about losing your period. You know, like, oh, I didn't ovulate this cycle, probably won't get a period, or oh, I ovulated later in the cycle, I'll get a late period. You're very empowered. You don't have to worry ever again. How can I tell if I've ovulated? I'm still making my way through FN slowly but surely. Woohoo! Yeah, slowly but surely is the way to do it. You don't need to go crazy and go fast. You track your cycles. So I talk about it in Fully Nourished, about the female cycle, how your temperature and your cervical mucus and your cervical position changes over the course of your cycle, and that's what you would track. I recommend checking out the book Fertility Awareness Method, or not Fertility Awareness, Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. Or there's a lot of women on Instagram that talk about the Fertility Awareness Method. So I think I did talk about it in my menstrual cycle highlight story as well, how to track your cycle, or Fertility Awareness Method, FAM. So I have some resources as well. But yeah, you would just begin to track your temperature, and keep in mind that after you ovulate, you start making progesterone. And so 24 hours after ovulation, you will see a temperature spike because progesterone stimulates thyroid function. I'm going out of the country for vacation in a couple months. Anything you'd suggest I pack to prevent getting sick or help if I get sick? I don't think obsessing about like getting sick. Are you just saying like getting a cold or a flu? I usually will take like activated charcoal, vitamin E, oregano, some type of probiotic maybe, and magnesium. And I just kind of like hope for the best. I'll look like locally for a lot of vitamin C rich foods if I can find like papaya or oranges or something like that. And I just make sure I go down on those vitamin C rich foods, and I try to eat as healthy as possible. But the biggest thing is just make sure you're still prioritizing sleep. You can still have fun on vacation without going crazy with no sleep, and not going overboard on alcohol. Like, you still want to do the 1-for-1 rule and make sure you stay hydrated. Tips for how to track. Do you like a specific method over another? I think it's just important to kind of track, I think it's important to track old school just so you learn your body with PCOS, but some women like just do not want to do that, or they can't do it for any reason, or for whatever reason, and so they like to use something called OvuSense. I don't know how I feel about like wearing something in my vagina to track my cycle. It's not my thing, but a lot of people like Daisy or the Ava tracker. I don't know how I feel about the Ava tracker just being a bracelet. Like, I'm just like, it's not super accurate. Or Temp Drop, which is the armpit tracker. So it really depends on like what type of ease you're looking for. All of those things are going to be some type of investment. So if you're like, I want something cheap, a basal body thermometer is always super cheap. So at that point, it's just kind of figuring out what's your budget. Do you want to like get an expensive tracker that's just going to do all the work for you? Or do you kind of want to learn to do it yourself? I don't find that tracking is that difficult at all. You just stick your thermometer in your mouth, under your tongue in the morning, right when you wake up, turn back over, doze for a couple minutes, and then look at your temperature and put it in your phone. It's super easy. And then you'll start to see your patterns. At first, you just start tracking. You don't worry about anything. You just start plugging in those numbers. And then after about a couple weeks, you'll start to see like, oh, I see a spike and then a dip, or I see a dip and then a spike, and it stays high for, the last 2 weeks of my cycle. You'll start to actually see the pattern, and then you can start to see like, okay, this is where I'm ovulating. OMG, that's so true. So many people stop the celery once they feel good, but after a while go back on it because they feel worse without it. Yeah, it's just a symptom suppressor. Yes, I always get colds or virus when I fly. Oh, bummer. Yeah, I would do oregano. I would do lots of vitamin C. Consider like a spore-based probiotic, and just like look for immune boosting foods while on your vacation, like maybe some garlic, maybe some lemon juice, lemonade, orange juice, papaya, kiwi, those types of things, pineapple. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, like monolaurin or lauricidin can be really, really helpful, but if you've never taken it before, it might be really rough. If you struggle with viruses or colds, it might be like rough getting on that. So just I would opt for like the more, just a little bit less potent stuff like oregano. And there is a supplement by Now called Allibiotic that has a little bit of elderberry and things like that in it. It can be really potent. What should a good temp range be for non-ovulation part of the cycle? I think my temps are low. You still want it to be like above 97.6 when you wake up. Optimally like 97.8 to 98.6. But yeah, a lot of women, keep in mind that your pre-ovulation temperature is a little bit more accurate of like how your metabolism is working than your post-ovulation temperature. Because once progesterone starts to play a role in your cycle, then you'll begin to see higher temperatures. So, but yeah, it might be low, it might be high. I'm not really sure what it is, but yeah, usually want it above 97.8. All right, guys, last call for questions. Thanks for hanging around. I don't know how long I have left, but I'll give you guys a few more minutes. Oh, I have 10 more minutes. Awesome. Any more questions on cycle awareness? The fertility awareness method is like gets a lot of hatred. A lot of people are still like living in the olden days where you have to rely on some type of synthetic hormone to practice birth control. But I think like the fertility awareness method comes with so much more than just birth control. It also gives you a lot of empowerment around your cycle. You know exactly what's going on. You know exactly what you need. You can kind of start to pay attention to patterns in your cycle, and it's just really empowering. So there are other things besides birth control that the fertility awareness method helps with. But the way that you choose to practice it, there's so many options now, and it's really about how crazy you want to get with it. There are people that like a pen and paper tracking, and I'm like, come on, like this is the 21st century. But some people really enjoy it. I personally just want to do something really quick, and so I use the Kindara app and just a normal basal body thermometer. Did you say it's best to do progesterone after period? How are you liking your new progesterone oil? No, it's best to do it after ovulation up until your period. So sometimes it can stop you from getting your period if you continue to take it, because a normal dip in progesterone would bring on your period. So you want to make sure that you don't continue to take it if it's preventing your period from coming. But I like my progesterone oil. I started using progesterone oil just as an experiment. I used to take oral progesterone, oral compounded progesterone. I haven't really seen a huge difference. I think it's doing okay. But I might go back to the oral compounded to see like, oh wow, this made a difference or not really. So I'm just gonna go back and forth and see like what I notice. Yeah, my temperatures before I ovulate are usually low 97s. I eat carbs and eat every 2 to 3 hours. I can tell my metabolism is awful. That could be like gut issues, liver issues, lack of B vitamins. Sometimes that can like slow down the metabolism. Magnesium deficiency is really important to make sure you don't have potassium. But yeah, if there's gut issues, then there's usually some type of like lower temperature. Who do you recommend on IG who talks about the fertility awareness method? I like... what's her name? I think it's Fertility Awareness. I think that's just her handle. I like Fertility Charting, and I like what is it? Fantastic Fertility, I believe it's called. But yeah, you guys can look at my followers. I follow a few Fertility Awareness method girls, and they're really good. I unfollow anyone that like stresses me out. Also, I'm Italian, and here we never ever snack, just three meals a day. Is it really necessary to eat every 2 to 3 hours, even if not used? I think it's just kind of important to follow your body. Some people can do well with 3 really good-sized meals per day. I don't think like you need to eat every 2 to 3 hours, but sometimes people have like poor metabolic function, and they need to kind of like balance their blood sugar a little more, and so maybe doing something in between the meal can help, whether that's just something small or eating like maybe 4 meals throughout the day. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary if that's what you do and you've always done, but sometimes it can be helpful for some people. Can you spell the Kindara app? Yeah, it's Kindara. Is oral progesterone a prescription? Yes, a compounded oral progesterone is a prescription, but the tincture oil that I bought is not a prescription, and it's called Ona's progesterone oil and vitamin E, ONA''S. Do we have to take vitamin C with our vitamin E always? No. Vitamin C can be taken apart from vitamin E. It just depends on if you're getting a lot of vitamin C rich foods. So kiwi, papaya, oranges, obviously citrus, are all vitamin C rich foods. Raw bell peppers are another vitamin C rich food. So just making sure you're getting enough vitamin C. I always feel tired if I study for more than 1 hour without a break, so my vision gets blurred. Why is that? P.S. Sometimes I get dizzy and everything blacks out for a few seconds as I get up in a hurry. Sounds like low blood pressure or hypoglycemia. At that point, I find that a lot of times, of course, like making sure there's nothing more serious wrong, but a lot of times it's just a lack of sugar. Like your blood sugar is just low constantly, because keep in mind, guys, that a lot of people are like, oh, I eat protein, carb, and fat every 2 to 3 hours, and I'm like, but have you done that in the past, or have you like gotten yourself to such a roller coaster where your blood sugar just goes up and goes down, goes up and goes down? So sometimes sipping on like something throughout the day can be really helpful. Sipping on juice, sipping on milk, sipping on something that's going to provide a steady stream of sugar, or doing like small snacks, like if you find yourself getting tired, eating some fruit or that type of thing. Taking a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of a break. But also, how are you sitting? Are you hunched over and slouched over, or are you, getting up and standing up and allowing blood flow? But whenever you get dizzy and everything blacks out when you stand up, that's usually a sign of low blood pressure. So those are things I would definitely look into. But keep in mind, women need sea salt, we need sodium, women need potassium, we need minerals. And if we don't have them, sometimes our blood pressure will be really low. Or if our thyroid function is low, we will have low blood pressure. Or if our adrenal function is imbalanced, whether we're pumping out way too much stress hormones or not at all, then we can also see a problem with that. But okay, guys, last call for questions, and then Instagram's going to cut me off in about a minute. So just wanted to make sure you guys got everything in. But thank you so much for joining me. This will be live, and then all of my lives from this week and last week will go on YouTube. But thank you for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.